Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very safe and well. Thank you for joining us for our third show of the week. We are literally still up in the clouds somewhere, just up there. Somewhere up there we are at the moment. Just an incredible last 24 hours that we're still trying to come to terms with Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. Delighted to be joined alongside me by, my co-host, the orchestrator, the instructor of our crazy train, Lee McQueen's in the house. Lee, how are you? Lovely to have you back on.
Absolutely, like you say, absolutely buzzing. The comments are coming in already. Still buzzing from yesterday. And literally, if yesterday's game wasn't just a clear synopsis of the crazy train, then I don't know what is. Absolutely crazy, and I'm absolutely loving it. And I'm really looking forward to having Martin on and getting into some. Can't believe I'm saying this, Rick. Into some transfers. You've finally broken me to get into transfers, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So really looking forward to it, mate.
Absolutely. Now, you won't need any bearing that we're 20 days into the January transfer window. And I think you've all probably found and you've seen, it looks like Fabio Paratici has somehow found his signal. He's found 5G. And in the last few hours, it's almost exploded. Different news from different outlets, from different sources about different players. So we're delighted to be welcoming back to the Last One on Spurs, Chief Sports Reporter for The Sun, Martin Lipton joins us once again. Martin, lovely to have you here. How are you?
I'm extremely well, chaps. Good to be here. Hope it's going to be some fun this evening. Certainly not as much fun as last night, because you don't think you can beat that. When you're my age, and you're a bit of a political geek like me, you always remember, like, the thing was, were you up for Portillo, which was 97 when he lost his seat? And that was like, were you up to watch Moura, and were you up to watch Bergwijn? It's in that panoply of events, that earth-shattering moments out of nowhere. That was it, really. But it was fantastic last night, and they thoroughly deserved to win. It was the best performance, I think, on the ball that I've seen from Spurs all season. They looked as if there was a freedom in their movement, and even some of the players who I don't think are good enough played well, which tells you something.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think, again, the character, resilience of these players, put to the test, really, on the verge of losing Antonio Conte's Premier League record at Spurs. And, the mentality once again at 2-2, for them to go and get the ball back, to go and actually believe there's another goal in this, I just thought was remarkable. And
it's crazy. It's like Martin just touched upon there as well. And I know you've done a big show on this yesterday, of course, but some of the players that were coming off the bench, I think we mentioned it in the WhatsApp group, didn't we, yesterday, to say the changes will win this game. And he when he brought on Doherty, I was thinking, well, Emerson weren't very good at all, was he? Let's be honest about it. And Doherty came on. I was thinking, all right, is that the right change? And he influenced the game. There's no doubt about it. He probably had his best game in the Spurs shirt. I mean, Steven Bergwijn was absolutely brilliant. And phenomenal. Yes, it was more for me yesterday. It was more than 3 points. I don't know if you agree. It was more than 3 points yesterday. It was galvanised. It was team. It was we were together. And, that's going to really let us kick on, I think, for the rest of the season. I mean, four games in hand, I think, we got on Chelsea.
Yeah.
Crazy times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Martin, I say lovely to have you here. You've joined us, I think, over the course of the last few transfer windows. So you are back again in the hot seat, hopefully going to give us some news, because we're 20 days in, and I think it's fair to say that we are restless. And as Spurs fans are always restless during a transfer window, but even more so now by how late we should leave it. And you said to me off air, don't you ever learn? No, we don't. We never learn. We're Spurs fans. We're impatient. We want transfers. And we have to start firstly with, Antonio Conte, because he's made an unbelievable start as Tottenham Hotspur head coach. I mean, look, still unbeaten in the Premier League, 1-6, drawn 3, just 1 point off that top 4, with 3 games in hand, 8 points behind Chelsea. And you look at it and think there's a real strong feeling now that if he is backed in these next 10 to 11 days, then the club have got a real genuine chance of securing Champions League football. I just want to ask you whether you're confident that he will be backed in these next 10 to 11 days during this month.
I do believe that there's going to be some spending, but it will not be the wholesale stuff that people might want. I think a lot of it will be conditional on what they can get out as well as what they can get in. It isn't that easy in January. Conte would have known that. He'd have known that if there's going to be a big spend, it will be in the summer. But he is also right to say, come on, I'd need X, Y, Z. And he will be saying, come on, what are your priorities? What do you absolutely need, as opposed to what would you want? because what he would probably want is 7 or 8. He's not going to get 7 or 8. So what can he get? You know, he's gonna probably keep going with the reserve goalkeeper he doesn't fancy because he doesn't need him. Don't worry about that. What do I need? What are absolutely imperative changes to strengthen the side, and also for what's possible. So I don't think we should be expecting Daniel Levy to spend money willy-nilly. It's not in his nature. But nor do I think we'll have stasis, nor do I believe that we'll have no changes. I think there will be changes. The one thing you've got to remember at Spurs is that every deadline day, almost without exception, the media team ordering the pizzas about 8 o'clock because they're going to be there till midnight, because something always happens late. And they've got to get their photo shoots together and all of that for the announcement. It will be another day for Domino's. Don't worry about that.
For sure. And actually, Martin, you touched upon there about, you know, the amount of transfers that probably everybody would like to see, and even Antonio Conte. But, you know, it has been reports that a new midfielder, a striker and a wing-back are expected to be the priority this month. And obviously now, when I say this month, as Rick just said, what have we got? 10 days, 11 days left of the transfer window. Is there any information that you can tell us around specific positions that Spurs are recruiting for right now? Like, where do you think that they're targeting, Martin?
There's no doubt that right wing back is his first priority. He's looked at what he's got. Emerson's not been good enough. Doherty, despite actually a really good performance second half, and I've been more critical of him than anyone possibly, because I don't think
I'm on that.
He's not quite good enough. He wants Traore. Now, whether Traore is the answer, I don't know, but he sees him as the answer. And obviously, there's parallels been drawn with what he did with Moses at Chelsea when they won the league. Seems to be he would like another centre half, and he'd let Tanganga go if he could get him in. He'd like to replace Ndombele with a better midfielder. I still want to see a midfielder who can actually pass the ball, because I don't think we've got that. Despite actually some really good passing from deep by Højbjerg yesterday, I'm still not convinced with him on the ball. I think he does a great job defensively, and that block right at the end at 2-1 down was much more critical than it looked at the time when Sanchez and Tanganga managed to run into each other.
Slid in across, didn't he?
And obviously, he was looking at trying to find a second striker. But then we saw something we haven't seen for a very long time last night, and everything I'm hearing suggests that they've maybe thought and decided, and they can get away with Bergwijn being that, and more or Son, and working with what they've got, rather than necessarily going out and getting someone who they don't really want just to be a second striker. It was all, I suspect, conditioned on Bergwijn leaving for Ajax, which seemed a racing certainty. Because let's be fair, he's been unproductive. He hasn't scored enough goals. He hasn't done enough. He hasn't been great. He hasn't at times looked that A fit or B terribly interested. When you look at him yesterday, and the really interesting thing for me was when he scored the first goal, he didn't celebrate like a player who's finally scored his first goal in the league in 10 months. It was like, let's go and get the winner.
Yeah, it's an amazing mentality.
When a player hasn't been very successful and they rescued a point with the last kick of the game, you think he's going to be, look at me. And it wasn't. His first thought was, come on then, let's go again. There was no real celebration, which you would have expected in those circumstances. So I think that would have been for Conte one of the most impressive signs of irrespective of the fact that he then scored a really good goal, his approach to that moment of joy was, that's not enough.
Yeah. It was. He definitely made up for it after scoring the third goal with a celebration zone. Oh, brilliant stuff! And it's actually just interesting, just touching on Bergwijn while we just talk about him now. It's probably a difficult question, very subjective, but do you think now with Ajax seemingly making 2 official bids that we're just going to say no now? Because for me, I obviously watching the game and stuff yesterday, and then looking at Antonio Conte's press conference. He clearly don't want him to go anywhere, does he? So, you know, if we're talking about back Conte and Conte says, I don't want Bergwijn to go, surely the club's not going to sell him now, are they?
Well, if it's more a case of Conte, which I think it might be saying, right, I can get away with him for now. If we don't sell him, it means I don't have to buy anyone, which means I can push Paratici and Levy more to get the ones I absolutely do need, which we all agree. So there's a little game going on there. And Conte you think is playing a slightly longer game than we all want to, because we all want everything now. He's also a realist. He will want what he wants. He will demand, and if he doesn't get what he wants in the summer, watch out, because I saw that after the end of his first year at Chelsea, he didn't feel back, and it became a war between him and the board. That's the last thing that Daniel Levy can afford, is to fall out with another, particularly a top manager like Conte. So he'll know that he has real strength in the summer. But he's also then, what do I absolutely need? And I suspect that is right back, a midfielder and a centre half. And those are the three things now that he will be demanding. I said there'll be lots of other changes that will be required over the summer. Second goalkeeper being an obvious one, a proper second striker to take the weight off Kane, a player who can play at 10, which we haven't really got, who can be that sort of elusive between the lines midfielder. But you can get away with it when if you're picking 3 from 4 up front in Moura, Bergwijn, who's now in the rotation, Son and Kane, you can get away with it because they're all good players and they all can give you something. I've been much more impressed with Moura over the last year than I had been before. I think he's really put under and has looked, and he isn't going to win every game, but he's always got a chance of doing something. Looking back, I still wouldn't have let Lamela go, because I know everyone sort of dug him out, but I always thought he gave a little bit of spite, which you need in a team, a bit of the dog, but he also could do things, and you want players who can do something different. And Bergwijn suddenly looks like he's a player like Moura, and obviously we know Son and Kane, who can do something different.
Yep. Yeah. I must ask you, Martin, we talk about players potentially coming in, players going out. It feels like a lot on this window. We've seen Spurs linked with players, and it seems subject to potentially a loan with an obligation or a swap. I mean, do you feel at the moment, you said there's not maybe a huge amount of money. Is there a huge amount of money to spend this January?
Is there if they wanted to spend it, because they could go out and spend £400 million, and then they wouldn't be in breach of financial fair play regulations. But then they couldn't spend a penny for the next 3 years, so that wouldn't make a lot of sense. You've got to be realistic. Daniel is always going to want value. It's in his nature. So he will. There seems to be an ongoing, game with Wolves over Traore. They'll eventually pay, I think, what's required, but they won't pay that until they absolutely have to, and they'll try and nick $2 million off the price. It's in his nature. It's like the scorpion and the fox, isn't it? It's nothing he can do about it. He can't stop being Daniel Levy.
So as far as you're concerned, Martin, if we say if Spurs are reliant, would you say we're not reliant then on outgoings to bring in players?
I don't think reliant, but it would make sense to balance the books. You're only allowed 25 in the squad. There is no point in keeping Tanguy and Ndombele at the club.
What's the point?
So you get rid of him, come what may. If you bring in a right back, you don't need Emerson Royal and Doherty, but you can't sell Royal, because I think he might have played for Barcelona potentially already this season. You can only play for 2 teams in a season, so you're going to stick with him even if you're going to bin him in the summer. So one of those will go, probably Doherty, just because there's no point in keeping any more. If you bring in another centre half, you really need 6. No, so Tanganga's probably the one who goes, because you've then got the one you brought in, plus Romero, plus Dyer, plus Sanchez, plus Davis is really now a left-sided centre half, not a left back. So you're going to manage the squad, and you can do that. And look, Dele Alli is another one. I can't see any point in him staying, because he's not going to get a kick.
I agree. I mean, just to comment. I mean, Hugo is all over the comments, and it would be weird of us not to talk about him. We had it on very, very good value earlier in our group, didn't we, Ricky? From one of our own, Frank Major, that Hugo Lloris is going to sign a 2-year contract, and it has been all over now social media that is actually happening. I think Fabrizio is actually tweeted that out now. That's a fantastic signing, for want of a better expression, isn't it? An extension of his contract, Martin, to keep who I believe is a top 5 goalkeeper in the world at our football club for another 2 years is a phenomenal achievement for us, isn't it?
Look, I mean, I've had some questions about his distribution in the past. I think we all have, but no one's had questions about his goalkeeping, his shot stopping, his mentality is outstanding. I'm amazed I'm really pleased actually that he's going to stay, because I think he's been a brilliant servant since he's been at the club. I mean, it's a decade now. It's not as if he's only been here for a couple of years. We forget how long he's been. He's been through about 12 managers, it seems to me. He's been through a long time, and he's done extremely well from the very outset. And he's been a focal point of the team in the dressing room. He's a pole, a strong man within that side and that squad. He is the club captain. And one of the reasons I thought he might go was because Harry might want to be club captain.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any issue between the two of them at all. It's just one of those things that Harry is like the emblem of the club more, despite the fact that Lloris has got the armband more than Lloris is. But there aren't many better out there. No, we need a second goalkeeper who's good enough. We haven't had one for a long time. But then again, it's really good to find someone who wants to play second fiddle, because Lloris is going to play every game except League Cup and dead group games in Europe if we get back into Europe.
And even them, he sometimes plays. I mean, I think Lloris has played a couple of games in the Carabao Cup even this season, isn't he?
Yeah. So it's a really, but it makes it's a statement as well. If they can keep the World Cup winning captain, who is a top goalkeeper, yes, he makes mistakes. The great thing about the best goalkeepers is that they make an almighty blunder and they don't even worry about it, don't even think about it. Because in their head, that's the mistake I've made for 10 matches. I won't make another one. Yeah. Younger goalkeepers make one mistake and their heads go. Because, I don't want to make another one. So that's part of the mentality of being an older keeper, that you accept that basically making mistakes that cost goals are an occupational hazard. And
absolutely,
that's what it is. Just get on with it. Don't make another one.
Yeah, listen, we're delighted to obviously hear that Hugo Lloris, I say, set to sign, if not already, ink dry on that contract, a new 2-year contract. Just to dig a bit deeper, if I can, Martin, on Adama Traore. Lee's going to come on to Ndombele in a second. But on Adama, at the moment, we understand from today, it looks like an official bid's gone in of 15 million, Wolves wanting close to 20. Are you confident that Spurs will get that one over the line come the end of this January window?
It's the priority signing. They will have to deliver. Look, I'm still not convinced. I am convinced he's the quickest thing I've seen since Roadrunner. I mean, he's just beat, gone. Woof. The trouble is, what happens at the end? He runs down the hole, doesn't it? It's like you never know what. He doesn't create enough assists. He doesn't score enough goals, but he stretches teams like nobody's business. And you say to him, right, he's physically impressive. He should be able to do the basic defending job, because he's so strong. And then if you get broken field to run into, he can absolutely pulverize him. And the manager will spend 3 weeks telling him where to put the ball. Go past the defender and place it here, place it here, place it here. Because if he places it in the right place, Kane or Son will score. That's it. They'll make the run. They'll know instinctively. And it also, with that pace from deep, pushes other teams back, which creates space in midfield. If they drop off, then Kane's got a bit more space if he wants to drop. All of these things change the dynamic of the team. And whilst I'm still not entirely sold because of the lack of end product, which we've seen time and time again. I mean, how many times do you think he's going to score? What a brilliant! Oh, he's missed it. That's Traore. He gets. If you're a Wolves fan, he must be the most frustrating player in the history of the club, because you think he's got everything except the one thing you really need, which is a clinical edge with the last kick,
and also
to deliver and develop it.
Just to interact with you there, Martin, as well. That is a part of the team that we're also missing as well. I mean, like Emerson got absolutely roasted when he had about 30 crosses into the box, or not, as the case may be, against Watford. And then we're going to replace him essentially with somebody who can't also have end product. But you are right. I mean, Majestic was on a friend of ours, and friend of the show, Chris Cannon, one of our own, his show yesterday, and he was talking about Aaron Lennon and making it a comparison with Aaron Lennon. That actually, when you look at Aaron Lennon, low centre of gravity, pace to burn, some of his end product wasn't brilliant, but actually doing all the things you said, stretching teams, people are aware of him. If you're going to have to go and double up on Adama, then all of a sudden you're leaving space for Son or for Kane or somewhere else in the pitch. And that's quite an interesting dynamic on that side of things. So Neil G just writes in the comments there, you just put it up, Rick. I can see Leeds over the moon. I'm a little bit like Martin. I'm not completely convinced, but I do see why there's a benefit. And I'll caveat everything that I say tonight on transfers is if Conte wants them, I'm behind it, because this guy is an absolute genius.
It changes. Also, Traore will not be hitting the crosses from where Emerson hits the crosses. It's not. He doesn't play this because his thought will be to get beyond, attack the fullback. So if he does that and checks back, there's a space for Winks or Højbjerg to drop in to play the cross, the ones that Eriksen used to play when Rose or Walker would bomb beyond the fullback and then play the ball back. That second goal that Dele scored against Chelsea in 16-17 is a prime example. Walker went beyond the fullback, played the ball back. There's a pocket of space. Eriksen played the ball to the back post. Dele Alli scored the header. Those are the sort of things you'd look to get from a Traore. Whereas with Emerson, he tends to, if you look, most of those crosses he hit were between the penalty spot and 15 yards out in terms of where he didn't hit too many, even at Watford with all that possession from deep. He's hitting them earlier, and they ended up too easy actually because they're always in front of the defender. And Watford have 3 strapping centre halves. They went bang, which is they're allowed to do.
Is there a concern, Ricky or Martin, that will bring a Dharma ring? Look, I mean, there's comments on there why we're only offering 15 million. This is just normal stuff. It will be done. You know, we all.
It's in his last 18 months of the contract now, isn't he? 12 to 18 months.
We expect the deal to be done. Is there a concern with Ricky or Martin, with either of you, on the viewers and the listeners, that actually we're bringing in somebody who needs to be converted? You mentioned Victor Moses, and he's done a phenomenal job with Victor, converting him, Conte, but why not go and buy an actual right wing back rather than having to buy somebody that we have to convert? Does that make sense, or is it very?
I think it's the physicality, though, isn't it? I think it's the physicality he brings. The fact that he's such a physically strong player. If you look at someone like Max Aarons at Norwich, who Spurs have been linked with forever, quite frail. He is. I mean, he looks more of an athlete. He has that build, but he's a bit physically frail, isn't he? Now, what if you're Conte, one thing you want is that strength. And you say, okay, I'll accept that there's going to be mistakes from him, but what he gives me is more than enough. And if you look at the stature, not too dissimilar to Victor Moses. In fact, he's slightly broader, but it's a similar sort of physique. And Moses was a strong boy. He's a strong boy. And he come from, and even if he went to a private school at Whitgift, he came from those sort of streets of South London and had to look after himself. You know, he's one of those.
Sure.
And he grew up at Palace. It wasn't easy, you know. So I think you want players who've got a bit of that about them, and that's the argument, I suspect.
Well, I mean, I think we all agree that we're expecting Adama to come into the football club, and Oil Boy, as one of our own, Jason, has nicknamed him, and it's going up and down on the comments as well. Rick mentioned, Martin, about Tanganga and Ndombele. Obviously, we're not going to do a whole transfer show and not talk about Ndombele. He has been training on his own in recent days, away from the rest of the Tottenham Hotspur first squad over at Hotspur Way. 25-year-old now, Frenchman was left out of Antonio Conte's squad to face Chelsea in the Carabao Cup semi-final, and also the away game that we just won yesterday. Who can forget that, against Leicester, of course. How hard will it be, do you think, Martin, to move him on, given the significant wages, being at the club's record signing, that sort of stuff? I mean, reports from The Athletic today broke earlier today, now on Sky Sports News, that PSG are very interested in him from a loan perspective. Do you see anything happen in the next kind of 10, 11 days with Tanganga and Ndombele?
I can't see any reason to believe he'll still be at Spurs after February 1. They don't want him. The club don't want him. He doesn't want to be there. It's been a disaster. £56 million. I thought it was going to be an outstanding signing when they got him. It hasn't been. We've all got to put our hands up. Everyone's got to say, it's just not worked. There's a variety of, if you look back to him when he started his career, he had this issue in France of being a bit lazy. He's not just a bit lazy, is he? I mean, crikey, he doesn't try a leg. I think the most savage indictment of him, serial indictment of him, is the fact that he's just never been fit enough to play 90 minutes.
Yeah.
He's a professional football player.
Yeah.
I do not believe that anyone can promise you they'll play well. They can't. I do not believe that anyone can promise you that they're going to that they're going to impact the game. You can't. But you should be able to promise that you're fit enough. If you're an international player for 55 million and on 200 and whatever it is grand a week, that you're fit enough to run up and down a football pitch for 90 minutes. It is actually the bottom line of a professional athlete that you're fit.
Requirement, isn't it?
And he's not fit.
Can I ask?
After an hour, he's blowing, isn't he? He can't cope.
I must ask you, Martin, are you concerned by Spurs' lack of due diligence that was done on bringing him to the club? Because there were certain reports that he had form for this when he was coming up through the ranks, you would say, at some of the French clubs in the lower regions before he eventually got his move to Lyon. Should more have been done?
He made his breakthrough season to Lyon 2 seasons before we signed him. For 56 plus add-ons.
Yeah, but you then again, look, and that season at Lyon, he was outstanding. And Spurs were hoping they were getting a version of N'Golo Kante. Yeah. Remember, he came from nowhere, Le Havre to Leicester, to being and out of nowhere, this player that nobody had heard of, is one of the world's great midfielders. Spurs thought they were buying someone who was going to be one of the world's great midfielders. You looked at him playing for Lyon, and you can see why. He seemed to have every attribute, and he does have every attribute in his skill set, apart from the ones that matter. And that's the saddest thing, because when he looks back on his career, he'll be extremely wealthy, and good luck to him. It's not about, he will know that he has not fulfilled his potential.
Indeed.
And the reason is entirely between his ears. Simple as that. He is not the required dedication. And there comes a point when Pochettino has worked it out. Mourinho has worked it out. Ryan Mason wouldn't even pick him, would he, in the squad virtually for the League Cup final. Nuno didn't get much right, got that one right. And now Conte. They're not all wrong.
Are you surprised, Martin? Are you massively surprised, and obviously with Pochettino being at PSG? We've seen reports this evening that he still appreciates the player. Are you really surprised that Pochettino is going back for Ndombele, or does it work because it's only a loan and therefore there's almost a reason for Ndombele to prove his worth, with the option potentially being maybe again a permanent move there in the summer?
I suspect you make the fatal flaw there of thinking that the manager at PSG has any input in transfers.
Is this all about Leonardo? Is this what it's all about, Leonardo?
And El Khalifi and other players deciding who they want in, because they have the ear of El Khalifi and others. So I don't think whoever the managers at PSG, they might be told we're signing them, but they probably get 20 minutes notice. I mean, it's just the way it works. And to be fair, there's nothing wrong with that model. But I think it's one of the problems, one of the reasons that it won't be a big deal for Pochettino, because he knows he's not long for this world there. They're looking for a reason to get rid of him. If they get beat by Real Madrid, he gets dumped. Only if he wins the Champions League will he stay, because that's the nature of the club. They want Zidane to be coach next season. They've made that decision already. So he just goes along with it because he gets another 6 months' money before he gets his, £15 million payoff. And if he gets him to work, brilliant. But he's not. Maurizio's not stupid. He knows how the game works, and he'll just play along.
Final one from me on Ndombele, Martin. I mean, again, we've discussed the high wages Ndombele is on. Do you think Spurs are naturally looking for a club to come and cover all of those wages, the 200 grand a week reportedly that he's on, or do you think they will compromise in order to get him off the wage bill? Because, like you say, Spurs don't really want him. He doesn't want to be there. Is it just best for all parties to accept what we can and move him on for the rest of the season, just so he isn't around the squad?
I don't think that Daniel would accept pleas of poverty from PSG, given they're bankrolled by the state of Qatar. So if he goes there, then no, you pay the full whack, governor, or you give us something else back, whatever it might be. Go elsewhere, then maybe you do that just to make sure that you get him out of the club, because it's time to just move him on and improve the morale within. We're talking about him training on his own. Can you be guaranteed he'll turn up?
You can't be. No, of course you can't. No.
And also, who'd know? because Conte wouldn't care. And the problem is the player might not care. Look, let's hope he's been really hard and let's hope he's done brilliantly. And he hasn't. He doesn't want to be there anymore. Let's just accept it, move on. It happens. Yeah. Good players don't all work. Mo Salah didn't work at Chelsea. I think it's fair to say he's quite good.
Yeah.
Every club has played. De Bruyne didn't work at Chelsea. He's not bad. At Chelsea. Other players have not worked at Spurs and have gone and been brilliant elsewhere. Other players, it happens at most clubs that a player just doesn't work, and then it changes for them. It's the nature of the game. And maybe he's homesick. Maybe he doesn't feel. His English isn't great. He doesn't feel at home in London. Probably wants to go back to France where he feels more at home. Perfectly understandable. It's just the lack of dedication that isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
Not human frailty. It's something we're all party to. Every one of us has got our faults and foibles and frailties. We shouldn't be antagonistic towards someone for that, but we've got a right to be angry or disappointed at a player who hasn't shown sufficient dedication at all from the moment he came to the club.
Absolutely. And before
when, like you say, it's a record signing, and the fact that we were mega excited when he came because he was a baller and we were expecting him to be a baller, and he's not a baller at all for our football club. And like you say, it's all in here. That is the behaviour and the way that he behaves and his attitude has just not been right since he walked through the door.
Look, when you watched the game last night, and you've got Winks and Skip, neither of whom have got half the natural talent, I'd argue, of Tanguy and Ndombele. I'd have 20 of them before one of him, because they really, really put it. And even when they're not playing well, and we know that Winks had some bad spells, it wasn't a lack of dedication. It wasn't a lack of fitness. It wasn't a lack of conviction. It was because he wasn't playing very well. And he was feeling desperately sad because he wasn't playing well. And he was angry that he wasn't playing well. And he cared so much that it actually made him worse, because sometimes that's what happens.
Martin, just some comments that we've picked up just on Ndombele before we go for our first break of the show. Then Lee's going to ask you about Dele Alli. Paredes has been linked as a potential alternative as part of maybe a swap deal with Ndombele. Are you hearing anything where Spurs may consider players as part of a deal for Ndombele with PSG?
I think this is PSG trying to do it on the cheap.
Yeah, me too.
And look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly reasonable for PSG with all the players they've got to try and well, okay, but maybe what about him? In the same way that if Spurs were looking to get someone from another club, they might offer somebody else to go the other way. It's what football clubs do. There's talk of Milan being in for Tanganga, and there's a chance that there's somebody else out there that, Kessie, for example, who could be involved. Spurs might try and do a deal. You never know. It's what clubs do. But what I'm hearing is that this is a PSG-led idea rather than a Tottenham-led idea. But also, if you are Tottenham and you are looking to buy somebody and someone's been a little bit reluctant, but they need the money, you want them to know that you've got an alternative, just to make sure that they do, in the end, sit down and do the deal. That's the negotiation. That's the game. That's how you're supposed to play it. It's a game of diplomacy.
Absolutely.
Patience.
Patience.
Levy,
so as fans, that we don't always have the word patience. But we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners that are on audio. There's over 400 of you watching us live. Thank you so much for tonight. We're battling Sky Sports with the Carabao Cup semi-final. Please keep us updated on what is going on there. Let us know. Hopefully Liverpool are still leading as things stand. You can keep us posted. And we're also battling, obviously, of course, the BBC Apprentice, which I'm sure we'll be catching up on. So looking forward to that. And, of course, Mr. McQueen, we have to give this another mention. Lee McQueen himself, the winner of BBC Apprentice Series 4, has also got a podcast that he's doing. Lee, just give it a quick mention as we've got some listeners here.
Plugging me halfway through the transfer show that we were.
What can I say?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a new podcast out of all the with all the current champions and the ex-winners of the Apprentice coming on each week. It's called In the Line of Hire, and each week we review the episode that's just gone by. We're going to get that live and interactive as well over the next couple of weeks. We've done a couple of pre-records so far. It's going really well. So subscribe. You can find me on all the socials at Lee McQueen, and you can get involved. If you don't like The Apprentice, don't bother subscribing because you'll hate it. But if you do like it, then please do subscribe, and a lovely feedback.
Superb, fantastic. Lee, let's kick off with you. Let's go through to ask Martin, of course, some of the midfielders we've been linked with.
Yeah, for sure, and obviously, I want Rick, if you don't mind, you go into a bit of detail with around the Dele Alli situation going out. But let's talk about some incomings. There's been huge reports that Conte is really keen to add another central midfielder. I think you touched upon at the beginning of the show, Martin, as well, that a CM is clearly something that we need, somebody that can actually pass the ball. The right player comes available. I think that there'd probably be an opportunity there. AC Milan midfielder Frank Kessie. Now, this is one that keeps coming up. I think he's in his last 6 months of his contract at AC Milan. They would rather keep him, the 25-year-old, there until the end of the season. But ultimately, we was just talking before we come onto the show, wasn't we? Is there a potential to get a deal done with Kessie to come in? I mean, now all of a sudden I'm getting really excited. So I'm thinking maybe Ndombele goes out to PSG, and then all of a sudden we can get Frank Kessie in 6 months earlier than when his contract runs out. Do you think that's a possibility? Because that's quite an exciting prospect, I would expect.
I think that he's a player that Conte really wants. He's his first choice for the position.
Really?
But it's not that easy. It all depends on what Milan feel is worth it for them. So do they hold on to a player who possibly keeps going, well, not say guarantees, but improves their chances of finishing in the top four to be in the Champions League next season, which is going to be worth probably in the order of 80 million quid, 70 million quid, if they get in. Maybe slightly less because it's a different market. In the TV pool is less in Italy, but they're right at the top of. But we say even say it's 60 million. Do they keep him for 60 million and lose him for nothing, or do they think, right, we've actually got enough anyhow to be in the top four this year, and we can get 15, maybe 20 million, like Spurs did with Eriksen and Inter.
Yeah.
And if they decide that, it's worth that they can afford that gamble because they think they're good enough anyhow, and then there's an offer in the right ballpark, then I think it can be done in the next 10 days. But if the offer's not going to be there, and Spurs will try and lowball because they say, well, hang on, he's going to go for nothing in 6 months, so he can't be worth more than 12 million or 14 million, whatever it is that they start as their initial bid, which they know obviously will then go up 5 million because that's the game. Then he may not be signed until the summer, in which time they may have to look for somebody else. I've seen Vertu at Roma being mentioned, but perhaps what he wanted, do they have to have another body in there? Because Ndombele is going to go. There's a space in that squad. You want someone who can do it. I mean, I'm still unconvinced by Lo Celso. I've been him as well.
Totally agree. Again, another that summer window. Just to interact with you there, that summer window where we were so livid with not being backed essentially after the Champions League final. Then we get Ndombele in, then we get Lo Celso, and we signed Sessegnon. We've got Jack Clark. We're thinking, all right, we've done 130 odd million. And, Jack Clark's playing for the under-23s. Sessegnon's always injured, bless him. Lo Celso and Ndombele, let's be honest, viewers and listeners, they've been disasters, haven't they, at the football club? That is, that's why sometimes we all have a go at the chairman or the board or spend money. But, they go and spend the money and then look what happens. And you just think, well, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And
it's not as if Lo Celso's a bad player who's disappeared. He won the Copa America this last time.
When he puts on an Argentina shirt, it's just a different player. It's just quite incredible.
And he obviously wants to be in a Spanish-speaking culture. It's where he feels happy. Because, as I said earlier, human beings. It's just what is. Some will settle. Some Spanish players. This is not a xenophobic thing. There are some Spanish players who've been absolutely brilliant in English football. Whatever you think of them as people or player, Fabregas, Azpilicueta, Mata for long periods at Chelsea, loads of them, absolutely brilliant Spanish players. Silva at City. I mean, beautiful football players. It's not nationality; it's the human being. How many English players over the years have failed to settle abroad? Loads of them. It's what happens. Players don't all settle outside their native environment.
Yeah. I know that's a namely on the screen, and you've mentioned a lot that you've been hoping that's going to come true.
Group, isn't it? Yeah.
Genie Wijnaldum, let's ask you quickly on that, Martin. Anything you've heard about a potential where PSG may allow him to leave the club before the end of the window?
Well, he's clearly not wanted there. He doesn't seem to fit in. So I think they would, if it was again, all clubs, the idea that, so and so are a selling club, everyone's a selling club, dependent upon the price. You know, what you offer, then you're a selling club. It's what is in football. Even PSG will sell Mbappe, even though they're one of the wealthiest clubs in the world, because they can't not. Because they end up selling him at some point rather than him disappearing on a free transfer. They may even do that anyhow. Everyone's a selling club. PSG, if the right offer, would be interested. Whether or not Spurs particularly want Wijnaldum, who's not he's a runner and a tackler and a header. He's not a passer. For me, that what we need is actually what is really missing is someone who can control a game.
Yeah.
With his passing, I don't
think. Hence the Eriksen replacement.
Not to decry his talents. It's a very, very good football player. Don't pretend otherwise. But he's not someone I think can dominate a game.
Yeah. Martin, we have to ask you about one player. I think the last time he was on, he was probably performing very, very well. And just the decline has been quite startling, really, Dele Alli. I just can't quite understand just the decline of Dele. And I know for our weekly listeners and per episodes that we do, Dele's name comes up now and people are just fed up of hearing us talk about Dele Alli. But what does the transfer window hold for him in the coming days? We've heard reports that potentially Newcastle may make a late bid for him. There's been reports allegedly that Eddie Howe tried to sign him twice when he was at Bournemouth. Potentially that may have been his time when he was at MK Dons coming through the ranks there. What do you think holds the key for Dele in these next 10, 11 days of this transfer window remaining?
A loan deal somewhere so he can play football, which would be good for him. If Newcastle don't get Lingard, I suspect they turn their sights to Dele with the belief that they can make him a player again and free him. Look, I've got no animosity at all. I think Dele Alli was absolutely brilliant the first 3 years, and the boy has lost his way for whatever reason. I think getting him out of London would be brilliant for Dele Alli. I genuinely do. I think taking him into a new environment with new people just to change what he's doing, because sometimes you just need that. I want to see Dele Alli back in the England squad because I think he's a rare talent. And as an Englishman wants the best players in the squad, I'd love to see Dele Alli at his best in the England squad. That is not going to happen whilst he stays at Spurs. It's just he's not going to see him in the Spurs squad whilst he stays at Spurs. So
he's not getting in, is he?
It's not his fault. It is his fault to a degree, but it's happened. You've got to be realistic about it. Go away, play some football, learn to love the game again, because you're a fantastic player when you love the game. You don't appear to love anything at the moment. It's really sad. Go and play, please, for your own good, for your own mental health, for your own physical health, for your own everything. Get out, go and play football. Play well, play really, really, really well. Show everyone that you can play and that they're wrong. Please go and do it. That for me is the answer. Don't care where, just go. Just for your own good, go and play football because you're too good to be sat not playing.
Totally. It's a waste of talent, isn't it? I think, you look at some of the clubs, obviously Newcastle, you mentioned Newcastle comes up, whatever. But, actually, when you look at the system that suits Dele Alli and the way that he come to prominence was under a 4-2-3-1, under Mauricio Pochettino, which has ultimately learnt all of his skill set, if you like, from a coach from Bielsa. You look at Leeds, and when everyone's fit at Leeds, he plays a 4-2-3-1. You could actually go and see potentially Dele fitting in the Leeds team. Right? It would be fantastic for him under Bielsa, working hard, getting back to where he used to be in that system. He could really show something and get back. That's why I am sentimental about Dele as well. I don't want to sell him because I want him to come back to Tottenham and show everyone that he can do it. Like Lingard, we talk about Lingard maybe in a little bit. He's been linked, but Lingard went through some bad times, didn't he? And he's come back good again after his loan at West Ham. Dele needs to kind of do the same thing, in my opinion.
It may not work. He may go away and play. But Lingard, when he went to West Ham, was outstanding. Gone back to United, barely got a kick. It's unfair. He's too good for that. He's proven he's too good for that. That's why he's so frustrated, because he wants to play. I just punch him out on loan for his own good, and then if he comes back as Dele rather than, as Mourinho said, Dele's brother, fantastic. And if not, well, okay, then it's just time, isn't it? Then you just try and find a place for him that will buy him. What you don't want to do is run his contract down for nothing and then walk out on a fee. But if that's what has to happen, then que sera, sera. At the moment, I can't see any reason to believe that he will play 10 more games for Spurs in his career. I can't see it.
He's got another 2.5 years on his contract, so he's just literally peeing his career down the drain.
He's still a young boy, remember? He's not old.
No, that's what I mean.
He's still got 8-10 years in football. But,
definitely.
But he needs to play. He needs to play football.
Yeah,
because it's what he's meant to do. He was born to be a football player, and he's not playing. And I just want him to be playing football. I don't care who he plays for. It's not a club thing here. I want someone who's a real talent to learn to love football again, because it doesn't appear to.
Somebody played football last night for sure, and come off the bench at half time and made an outstanding impact on the game, I have to say. And we've referenced him already as Matt Doherty. He could potentially be leaving Spurs. I think he was probably right at the top of most people's list. We don't know about Conte's. He had a big impact, as I say, yesterday. Republic of Ireland right back started only 13 Premier League games for the club since joining from Wolves in August 2020. I mean, that's when I was reading that before. That's surprising. He's got 2.5 years on his left on his deal. Do you think he could leave the club now on a permanent basis in January rather than a potential loan? And, maybe a daft question, but based on what we saw with him yesterday, do you think that starts to change Conte's mind or the club's mind on actually even letting him go at all?
I suspect that he's expendable, particularly if he gets Traore in. I have to say, for yesterday was the first time in his entire spell at the club that I thought we signed a football player.
Yeah.
Because I think that Tottenham's too big for him. And that's not. Some players are great in a small lake.
Yeah.
And he's going into the big pond and he can't cope with it. I think the club is just not, for whatever reason, it's not right for him. The expectation, the pressure, it hasn't worked at all. And he's clearly a decent player. I thought he was really good at Wolves. Yesterday, he looked very good. He's never going to score you a goal unless something happens, but he got forward. His crossing was still a bit ropey, but he was making, the run for the equaliser was a terrific late run. No question about that. And I felt actually quite sorry for him against Chelsea, because you shouldn't be asking him to play left back when every time he gets the ball, he's got to cut inside. That's not fair. Not when he's lacking in confidence. He got a run yesterday in his best position and played well. But it's, for me, too little, too late. And he's expendable. And if you can't get rid of Emerson because of the FIFA regulations, then he's the one who goes. And I'm not sure whether Emerson played for Barcelona. That's why I'm asking the question.
I think he might have. I think you're right, Mark. I think he did. We'll check it. Oh, 2-0. Come on, Liverpool.
Oh, that's a shame. I'm absolutely devastated.
Well,
there's a VAR review about allegedly VAR review.
Don't tell me that, Alan. We do not
I think
want
he
to
might
know.
be off, actually. I've got to say, I haven't looked at that. I think he might be offside. Anyhow.
Oh, what a shame. Must be because they've played the kids tonight, haven't they? Arsenal.
All those kids, White, Gabriel, the Japanese chap, Smith,
Tommy Yasu.
Lacazette's from the. I think Lacazette's 18, isn't he? 17, 18. Terrible. Rick,
onside.
Is it offside? Offside.
Onside.
Shocker. I was just going to ask, before we go back over to Rick, Martin, I was just going to ask you about a centre back coming in. So we've been, I say heavily linked. That's probably a bit wide of the mark. Tonight, there's been rumours coming out that actually a London club has rivaled the bid that Newcastle put down for Diego Carlos, centre back, plays for Seville. I didn't know anything about the bloke, if I'm honest. I was freely on my phone before we come live today. And by all accounts, he plays for Seville on the right-hand side of a back four. But as you pointed out to me in agreement earlier, the reality is, John Terry done pretty well playing on the left-hand side and he's right-footed. So as long as they're a good player, can you tell us anything? Do you think that London club link is Tottenham? Do you think that we've gone and rivaled a bid with Newcastle for Diego Carlos?
I think there's a view that he's available because he's available and he fits the bill and others aren't. And obviously Conte's had a look and thought, yeah, he'll do that. There's something genuine in that. If it comes down to Spurs v Newcastle, it's on the player. Does he want the money or does he want to be in a team that is competitive now? That's his choice. Yeah. Remember, is it Sevilla? If I'm at Sevilla at the moment, I'm thinking we're going to win the league. We can win the league here.
Definitely.
Why do I really want to let him go? Because they're in a great position. They're a very, very good team. They're the only real challengers to Real Madrid this season. So that's another factor. Does he really want to? Do they really? But we know that Sevilla have always been a selling club, as we go back earlier. But they're a club that very happily backs itself to recruit brilliantly. Monchi does a lot of that and replace whoever they sell. Look at the players that they've sold over the years. Dani Alves and Sergio Ramos and others. They've had loads of good players gone through, come back. They're really smart at recruitment. So they'd probably back themselves to find an alternative. That being the case, and there's a chance, he's got to be better. He is better than what we've got. Because at the moment, I still don't trust Sanchez, I'm afraid. I think that Dyer has had a very good season and we've missed him the last few weeks. Romero clearly is a class act. So if you've got Sanchez as the fourth in your rotation and Davis as the option as the left-sided fifth, with Tanganga then going, as I suspect will happen, it looks stronger already. It may not be the fault. I think then in the summer you punt out Sanchez and get another one in and Dyer then becomes fourth in the rotation. That's how it goes. That's the evolution.
And but that feels about right.
If you can do it, and you can do it for 25 to 30, then you do, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking on, I would say defenders, but more fullbacks. We've seen Spurs linked to two young fullbacks during this January transfer window so far, Martin. We've seen Middlesbrough's Jed Spence being linked and also Peterborough's Benjamin Mensah. These feel players more for the future than right now. I'm hoping you're going to say that. Anything you can tell us on those two, whether they're more long-term targets rather than immediate targets at the moment?
I don't think you necessarily need to buy them now. I mean, I think you couldn't buy Spence anyhow because he has played for two clubs this season. So you could, even if you bought him, you'd have to lend him straight back because you couldn't register him.
Yeah.
And the boy Peterborough, again, you would probably keep him back there unless you just wanted him to learn and come into. But he wouldn't be in the first team squad, because what games is he going to play in between now and the end of the season? So it would be more sensible. And if you were to do them to just, as they've done with Sarr, the Senegalese boy, who's in the squad next season, we forget about him because he could be the attacking number 10 answer. Maybe that's the plan all along. I don't actually know because I haven't seen enough of him to say. So that will change the dynamic of the squad next season, which I'd completely forgotten that. So I'm an idiot. But that's what I would think would be the situation with those two, that they would be, even if they were signed now, they'd be instant loans back.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And you mentioned earlier, just going back on the centre-backs, just staying in the defence, but going back on the centre-backs, you mentioned earlier about Japhet Tanganga potentially going out alone. There's been some interest. We think there's been some strong interest, actually, from AC Milan.
It's amazing, isn't it, how many Italian clubs now want to buy English centre-halves?
Well, crazy,
they used to laugh at us, but you've got Tomori, you've got Smalling.
Yeah, I always laugh when any of our players are linked with Milan. Bless Danny Rose. I always remember Danny Rose. Any interest from Milan in the All or Nothing documentary? It's like, hopefully that's not the case with Japhet. I mean, look, I think Japhet's had a bit of a. I actually think, if I'm being honest to the viewers and the listeners, I think Japhet's had a bit of a rough road from some of our fans. He's one of our own. He's 21 years old, 22, just turned 22, I think. He's had some decent games. He's had some poor performances. But again, I agree with John Berry on screen. I think he needs a loan. So I think it would be a brilliant move for Japhet Tanganga to go and play in a different league, different culture. Yeah. What have you heard on that, Martin?
Well, I think there's definitely a view that if they can get somebody in, that he's the one they could let go. I think for him as a player, spending 6 months or 5 months in Italy in Serie A would be the greatest possible value as a football player, as a human being as well, and education in every sense of it. He'd learn a different way of playing. He'd learn a different training environment as well. He'd have to fend for himself in a new country where he didn't know anybody. It would be huge for him in terms of his maturity, and you find out much more about him as a human being as well, as a bloke. He's a young boy. He's making mistakes, and it's hard when you're making mistakes under pressure for a big club. It is hard, and he's, centre halves aren't at their best in the main until they're 25, 26. He's a young boy. Whether he's quite good enough, I'm not so sure. But if he spends some time away and comes back having learned, then that's really beneficial. And if not, if he just plays okay, then you can probably sell him anyhow. So and that's good for him. We've all over the years, I've seen an awful lot of players who I thought might be half decent, who weren't quite good enough. Good players who went on to have very good careers at other clubs that weren't quite good enough for Spurs. On the converse, I've also seen some awful players who played far too many matches for Spurs. But
indeed.
There's probably 3 of them still kicking around now. Just before I go on to Rondon, just want to give a lovely shout out to Arsenal for Life that has joined the group. I have no idea why somebody called Arsenal for Life is actually in this group. Your team is currently playing and getting beaten, by the way. So why you're coming on a Spurs podcast and videocast to actually, troll us or whatever is quite bizarre. But good luck in the final of the Carabao Cup. And just coming over
and in the fourth round of the FA Cup.
Exactly. Joe Rodon, this is a funny one. It always seems to polarise opinion. Like Joe, for me, just giving my opinion, I think with Joe, I think he needs to go. He's set to leave this window, either on loan or permanently. But yet, as a club, still to receive any type of interest from a Premier League club for his services. Is he a player, do you think, that will be departing before the deadline? I think, for me, he needs to go on and play football. Like a little bit like what you're talking about with Dele and with Jaffet there. Joe needs football, doesn't he?
Definitely. I don't know whether he can play or not because I've not seen enough of him. I don't think anybody has. I think there was a lot of expectation. I think it would be a real player, a real chance when he came in from Swansea. And he obviously had the views of Davis and Bale talking him up as well. That's one of the reasons they obviously thought there was something there. And he played very well apart from that last-minute gaff against Chelsea, didn't he, in the 0-0 draw last season. But he's disappeared absolutely down the plug hole.
Totally
and
gone.
The manager, and when he has played, he's been pretty poor. I mean, he wasn't great against Morecambe, was he? Let's be honest. He looked panicky. He looked nervous. He wasn't the confident player you'd want. And for him, he's got a couple of huge games for Wales coming up, which are absolutely massive in March.
Yeah.
Chance to play at a World Cup. He needs to be playing football. He won't be in the team. And if he's not in the team, Wales are going to struggle. It's huge for Wales, for Robert Page and Wales and for Rondon just to be out playing football. I can't see him playing football at Spurs at the moment. So therefore,
no, I agree.
He's got to play. Really want him to play football. I always say the same thing. I want them to play. I don't want to be keeping them for the sake of it. If they're good enough and they're playing well and they're an option, a rotation option, fine. He's not, is he? He doesn't appear to be. The manager doesn't seem to have any faith in him. For his own good, he needs to move on. I think he wants to leave and play football, and he's absolutely right to. And that's not being critical. It's not being negative. It's the right thing to do. And it's right for him to want to leave to play football. Really important.
I totally agree. And I think one of the things that, Rick, I don't know if you want to comment on this as well, is like one of the things that our club over the last few years, certainly since the new stadium, new training ground has been built, has been levelled at us, is that actually now when we have players in, they don't want to leave. Because where else do they go? Like, no offense to Joe Rodon, I think Joe Rodon's still on the up, right? He is nowhere near peaked in his career. He's a very, very good footballer.
We haven't seen nothing of him, have we? That's the problem. We've not seen nothing from a judgment.
But, when you've got players at the football club that are like, hang on a minute, if I leave Tottenham, the only place I'm going is below that. Do you know what I mean? Like a Musa Sissoko, for example. They're leaving the training ground. This is 5, 6 star. Martin, how many times you've been down Hotspur Way? You know the facilities down there.
Fantastic.
They're amazing. And it's hard to move these players on, isn't it? But like you say, if the want is and the attitude and the want is to go and really want to play football, they would move on. And I think Joe needs to go and move on. We can't keep loaning out players and keeping them back. Well, actually, why not? Chelsea have got like 22 players out on loan, so I'm sure we can. But with the new rule changes in, we better be careful. But Joe needs to go and play football, in my opinion. And I think if we can get a move for him, it'd be the best thing for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he needs to go. I mean, it's not criticism at all. If you're willing to stay at a club and not play, you should be in your 30s, not in your 20s. Or you should be the third goalkeeper, which is the best job in football. 40 grand a week, never kick a ball, perfect. Greatest job in the world. But other than that,
I might apply. You can still play football in goal, can't you, when you're in your 40s? I've
got to ask you, Martin. It's a player that we all loved during his time at the football club. I'm just conscious that as we talk right now, Partey's just been sent off for Arsenal. It is all going wrong honestly. As we speak right now. It's all kicking off. Unbelievable what is going on over there.
Work event.
It's a work event. Work event. Yeah, work event. Sorry, work event. This player, listen, I think we touched upon our lack of creativity, Martin, and it's not been the same really without him. And that was Christian Eriksen when he was in his peak at Tottenham, pulling the strings, the magician in midfield. We've seen he's been linked with a whole host of Premier League clubs, namely Brentford being one of those where manager Thomas Frank has been flattered by the links to the player. Just for our mental point of view, Martin, just to kind of flatten this or kill this link if possible, is there any chance of a Spurs reunion in these next 10 days with Eriksen?
I can't see it. I really can't. I think I really am amazed that he's even thinking about playing football, because he does it. It's only for the love of the game, because he's, he doesn't need the money.
Well,
he's a family man with young kids. He's only 29, 30. He's still young, and obviously he wants to play. But were I him, I would be thinking, you know what? I've had a pretty strong message here. But he'll look at someone like Daley Blind, who's had heart issues and still playing, and think, well, I'm just a one-off. Of course he has. That's what you would do. I would be. So that's a separate issue. I don't think I can see Spurs wanting to be responsible for taking that gamble.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There's a little bit of duty of care, actually.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
and I don't blame anyone who does. And if Thomas Frank trusts Christian Eriksen and he goes to Brentford and plays, fantastic. He's a fabulous player, and I'd love to see him play again. But every time I did, I'd be really nervous. I'd be so nervous, and I would be on edge, certainly for the first 3 or 4 matches.
Absolutely, especially the intensity. The intensity of the Premier League as well.
Yeah,
you made a great point. Yeah.
And I'm probably entirely wrong, and I'm sure the doctors would have cleared it. But you just think he nearly died 6 months ago. Just playing, doing what he's done for his entire life.
Harrowing.
What he's done for the last 25 years. What he's better at than most people on the planet. That's how good he is. And he nearly died. I wouldn't want to be there again. It's like, remember the reaction of the players and the fans when Mwamba happened?
Yeah. I was in the stadium.
The reaction of the fans in Copenhagen in the summer, and the players of both sides. I, as a coach, as an owner, I'd be reluctant to have that on my conscience, even potentially. And just a personal. I'm not saying I can have an insight into what Daniel or anybody else is thinking, but that's what I would think, genuinely. But I also would love to be wrong. I'd love to see him come and play football in the Premier League again, be Christian Eriksen, score 5 goals as long as one of them's not against Spurs, or we fall up when he scores. and hurt everybody else in the league and keep Brentford up. That would be wonderful. I can't see him wearing a Spurs shirt in a competitive match again. I'd like to think he might end up wearing a Spurs shirt again in a testimonial for someone or whatever in a game like that, because we never had the chance to say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Yeah,
but I think it would be hard to see him playing for Tottenham.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, from one genius midfielder to maybe somebody that has pulled up certain trees at definitely Manchester United and then certainly at West Ham, has been Jesse Lingard. And Manchester United have recently dismissed doing any deal for Jesse Lingard with Tottenham and also West Ham, as they believe it would mean strengthening a rival team, which is quite interesting. Given Jesse will be a free agent in the summer, Martin, do you feel that there'd be any interest at all from Tottenham to do anything for him now? Do you see him coming to Spurs? I mean, I personally don't see him in a Tottenham shirt either. He don't fit, but I don't know what you think, what you're hearing.
Certainly not this window, I don't think. Because he is available for nothing in the summer. If he goes, it looks as though United don't want to do that he doesn't want to sign for anybody permanently. He just wants to do a loan. That appears to be it. Newcastle probably ends up being the best place for him in that regard. And if they go down, then he obviously looks elsewhere. I wouldn't dismiss him as a summer signing. I'm not sure he'd be a priority, but it's football, and you'd be getting a 25-30 million pound player for nothing in his mid-20s. So it wouldn't be a bad move in that regard, and he'd be a good squad player. But that's what you look at. You wouldn't say he would be someone you'd have to get. When he went to West Ham, he galvanised that team, but they didn't have he gave them something they didn't have. I'm not sure he would necessarily give Tottenham something they don't have. He would be an add-on to what they do have, if it makes any sense. And I think he's a good player, and he certainly showed. I mean, he played really well through those few months and caused us all sorts of problems in that 3-2, didn't he? He was really, really good. He's a very good player.
Yeah, and in England as well, for England as well, he scored a couple of absolute screamers, in the run up to the World Cup qualifiers, and actually in the World Cup, I think he scored one from outside the box, didn't he? That went in off the bar.
That's got a very good goal.
Yeah, he scored a wonder goal. Yeah, no, good player. Rick?
Indeed. Coming back over to you, Martin, just focusing more on the forward areas now. A player we've been linked with for a very, very long time. Doesn't appear that much we've done this particular window, but again, maybe one for the summer. Dusan Vlahovic of Fiorentina, been an unbelievable.
Please make it happen.
His goal ratio has been incredible for the last couple of seasons, really. Been amazing. And again, a player that you would argue, I don't see why you couldn't have him to play alongside Harry Kane as opposed to, an alternative, either one or the other one during a game. What are you hearing, Martin? Are Spurs still hot on the heels of Dusan Vlahovic?
Definitely one they're looking at, monitoring, seeing. I think Arsenal seem to be pushing harder for him at the moment, but I don't think that's going to happen either. I suspect he sees out the season at Fiorentina, and then we'll see how it goes in the summer. Spurs need to, whatever happens, Spurs need to get someone into play up top to give Kane some rest, if nothing else, and the option of play two strikers in certain games and everything else. So definitely one of those that they would be in the mix for. Yeah. I don't think it will happen now. I think if it's going to happen, and I'm not saying it will, because it may be that someone else comes in with who really wants him, wants to play City, maybe Man City. If they can't get Haaland, they might go for him. And realistically, Spurs aren't going to be able to outcompete City. Not just for money, it's what they can offer. They can offer him pretty much a guarantee of winning the title and being close in the Champions League. So you would, if you were him and had that option, you'd take it.
I think you're also conscious as well that his agent may be looking at it, and this is what I think about Vlahovic. Is he looking for, rather than going to that elite club next, would his agent be happy to almost go to, how do I put this, a stepping stone club in the middle, which would then enable him to get, twice over a signing on fee? Does that make sense? Rather than going for the ultimate
that would be a
next.
Smart move if one of the really big clubs doesn't come in for him in the summer. If one of the really big clubs comes in, it's hard to say no to that. If they don't, then you want to go to a progressive club that is preferably a Champions League club, but if not, a Europa League club. club that's improving, and it would be easier for him to adapt if he was playing for a manager who spoke he will speak Italian, I'm sure, from being in Fiorentina, who knows the mentality of the player. So we'll see how that works. You could argue, as someone just has there, a bit like Haaland going from Salzburg to Dortmund before the next step, which will probably be Madrid or City. It's that it's not middle tier, it's upper tier, but not highest tier. And Spurs are upper tier, not highest tier.
Spurs. That is Spurs. I mean,
it wasn't until Conte turned up.
No, for sure. But that's, again, it's a brilliant point, because Conte turned up top 5 manager in the world, in my opinion, current top 5 manager in the world. He knows the Italian league. He knows. He would have known him from his links with the Italian league, but playing at Fiorentina. Sorry, look at what he's done to Lukaku in Milan. Look at what he's doing with potentially what he's doing with Kane. Adam McFarlane makes a good point. Haaland is on a free in the summer. Mbappe's on a free in the summer. These start moving around. You don't know what's going to end up happening with Vlahovic. I just think that it is a big gamble and it is a big risk. And we don't do either of them things typically, especially with the Ndombele that we talked about. But you go and slap 75 million euros on the table, 10 million for the agent's fees or whatever, get him on 150 grand a week, and you do it now and make it happen. I think that is absolutely huge. And when you talk about the playing style, you've got Kane. Where Kane was yesterday, I don't think, and it was said lots, so it's not my thing, although I agree with it, I don't think there's anyone else in the world that can pass maybe 2 or 3 people in the world that gets that ball exactly right, like Kane played that ball to Bergwijn yesterday. And he was deep, he was dropping deep. Imagine having a Vlahovic and a Son running in behind, or having 2 up top and then one dropping.
Formidable.
It could be outrageous, like absolutely outrageous. He's 21 years old. The profile of what Daniel likes in our football club is young, up and coming, with a potential sell on, which is exactly what you just talked about. Sign a 5-year deal, 6-year deal. He might move on in 3 or 4 years' time. Or if he's happy and we're winning stuff, please God, then maybe he might stay again. But I just see it as a really good move for him. So if you're listening, Dusan Vlahovic agent, come and have a little chat and we can get the deal done.
Let's do it now. Yeah, no problem.
Let's get it done. I think it'd be brilliant for us.
Lee, we'll hand back over to you just to.
I got carried away there, lads.
Absolutely fine. We'll stay with you, Lee. We'll just stay with you, Lee, just in terms, obviously, of Spurs is number 9 at the moment.
Number 10. For sure. Number 10 essentially. Number 9, I would have him back as well, Gareth. But I think his number 9 shirt's still hanging up in the dressing room, ready for him to take it. But I don't think Pavlic's 5G signal's gone to Jonathan Barnett, to be fair. Look, for a while now, at Last One on Spurs, here at Last One on Spurs, we believe that Harry Kane has already committed his future to Tottenham by signing a new contract. Obviously, nothing out in the public eye, but we think that is the case. Do you think, Martin, have you heard anything, or do you think personally that is happening, or have you heard the same sorts of things, that Harry Kane is actually going to be committing his future to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club?
I think there's an increasing belief at Tottenham that Harry Kane will be there for quite some time still. I always took the view that he didn't want to leave. He felt he couldn't stay. And he felt increasingly that he couldn't stay.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where he was let down by City, because he was under the impression that City would pay whatever it took to get him. And he knew what the price was. And City then wouldn't pay the money. So I think he was let down by them. And he would certainly feel let down by them. He would have gone, be honest, if they'd offered the 125 that Daniel wanted, he'd have gone in the summer. And I don't think anybody at Tottenham, any fan, would have blamed him, because why would you have stayed at Spurs last summer if you could go?
Agreed.
Because it was an absolute shambles. They didn't know that what they were getting as manager. They messed about. They lost the bloke they should have got, albeit that they got him 6 months later. They've got in a bloke who was never going to fit. Absolutely appalling appointment as manager, was never going to work. It was pretty obvious. He got the raging hump, Kane, can't blame him, got messed about, all of that. It has taken him a few months to get his head round it. And if they hadn't appointed the bloke they did, he'd have probably left already for Manchester City.
Yeah.
You cannot have seen Harry Kane yesterday on the pitch with the ball, his reaction at the final whistle, and not thought that bloke doesn't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
This is the place he wants to be. Look at that. He was so desperate, so determined. It's his club. He now wants to break Shearer's record for Premier League goals whilst playing for Spurs. And as long as he feels the club is going in a way that allows him not necessarily to win, because you can't guarantee that, but to challenge to win.
That's all he's ever wanted, isn't it? That's all he's ever wanted.
It feels as if he's actually in a team that's just, he wants to win trophies. Of course he does. Everyone wants to win trophies.
Yeah.
But what matters is that he wants to play in a team where he has a chance of winning trophies and proper trophies. And a bit of it will be, are City going to be City when Pep leaves in 18 months? Probably not.
No.
They'll still be great. They'll still be really good. But it'll change
it wouldn't be Pep City, will it? Agree.
It just will. And Klopp may have left, and who knows where we're going to be in 18 months' time. It's a much more. It could be a very different scenario globally across the league at this point. And that's not to say that there's not a gap at the moment. It's not a gap. It's a gulf at the moment between City and Liverpool, and probably, despite the last couple of results for them in the league, Chelsea and Spurs. That doesn't mean the Spurs couldn't end up above Chelsea, but even we wouldn't expect it from here, would we? And we take it.
Imagine that happening.
Wow. You wouldn't.
It'd be incredible.
You put a tenner on it at the moment. Fourth, you would think we've got a genuine share. Doesn't mean we will, by the way, because I think it's 1 from 4 for fourth. Yeah, we're in a very good position to be fourth, but it's still 1 from 4.
Yeah,
but things can change quite quickly. And the one thing if Spurs can keep hold of Conte and they can recruit properly, and the other thing you've got to remember is they moved into the stadium and the money taps got turned off. So everything was predicated around 6 million every home game in the coffers, plus all the big events, the NFLs and the boxing and the Saracens games and the concerts.
Lady Gaga.
All of that stopped. All of that stopped dead for 18 months. So suddenly, the club hasn't got the money it had assumed it would have, which is big. And then they don't qualify for the Champions League, which is another 60 million gone. So all of those factors made things pretty difficult. And some of them are still there. But the refinancing, when they're paying £17 million a year in debt, in interest, when you've got a turnover of 400 million, 70 million is not that much. You can handle it.
Yeah.
When you've got the gate receipts starting to clip back in again, when you've got the other big events, and if you could get that 70, because it's now 70, 80 million for being in the Champions League because of the way they've restructured the money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything's different. That means you can actually make very rapid progress and comfortably stay within FFP. And Spurs only spend 55% of their income on their revenue and wages anyhow. So they're the best run club in the league in those terms, financial terms. But if your income is going up to 400, 450, 500 million, then you've suddenly got a £280 million potentially wage bill. Yeah. Which is 50% more than they are at the moment. You get better price for that, don't you?
Yeah,
you very quick.
Great point.
Maybe for once we won't have to pay off a manager every 6 months.
That'll be nice.
That's actually been our biggest cost, isn't it? Over the last 4 years. Crazy. I saw a stat. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was when Antonio Conte signed his 18-month contract. When it ran out, all the other contracts for the other managers ran out.
Pochettino, Nuno.
That is bull, isn't it? That mental, absolute mind blowing.
Yeah. Oh, listen, Martin.
Mistakes happen.
Unbelievable. Listen, Martin.
They're expensive.
Unbelievable. The comments important for you, Martin. There's been lots of love for you tonight. It's been a really, really good show. Thank you so much.
I don't get that from work, and I certainly don't get that from the kids and my wife, so I'm very happy.
To close it, Martin, we're going to put you on the spot now. how many players do you believe Spurs will personally sign between now and the 31st of Jan? How many would you say? Give us a number. How many do you think?
3.
Do you really? 3, yeah?
Nice.
Up to 3? Really?
I think they'll get the fullback. I think they'll get a centre half, and they'll get a midfielder.
There you go. Listen, if we get 3 of those, I think we've got every chance. And Martin, we have to ask you, can Spurs finish in that top 4 now?
Can, yes.
Will
we?
I spent 55 years or 50 years supporting Tottenham. I've learned that pessimism at least means you don't get disappointed.
Yes.
I agree.
To be honest, if we were 4-0 up with a minute to go, I'd still be a bit worried when we needed a draw. So, but I think things are moving in the right direction, and whatever happens, as long as we keep this manager, which means we'll have to give him what he wants down the line, the future is brighter than it's been since 17-18 season.
Yep.
That was an amazing season. I remember just going back a season before that. I remember 15-16 season where it was starting to build.
The foundations were being laid, wasn't they? The foundations were being laid.
The reason I say 17-18 is because 16-17 we came second. 17-18, at times he actually played better football. But the thing is, you still felt that even though they dropped to third, the momentum was going still in the right direction. It was after that it fell off. It was the end of that first Wembley season.
518 days without signing anyone, wasn't it? 518 days, as Chris Cannon always says, without signing anyone, that absolutely killed us. And what do we always say in football? If you don't sign anyone, you're going backwards. You're not standing still, you're going backwards. And that killed us them days, without doubt.
Yep, I totally agree. Brilliant. Martin, it's been a pleasure. Martin, where can we find you across the channels? Where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter at Martin Lipton. That's about it, actually. I mean, I'm on Facebook, but that doesn't count. That's just the mate. And you, obviously.
Honestly.
New meta. We'll call it meta.
The pages of Britain's second, sadly now, biggest selling national daily newspaper on a fairly regular basis. And on various TVs and radios. I, to be fair, as you've worked out, I'm a man without shame.
Martin.
Well, we love reading about what you're writing. I love listening to you when you get on and talk sport and all that sort of stuff as well. So, absolutely love it. And again, for me, thank you so much for coming on and making a phenomenal show for us.
Yeah, unbelievable. Martin, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be touching base with you again very soon, hopefully on the back of Spurs doing some business. Well, there you go. The wonderful Martin Cloak, joined by the brilliant Lee McQueen. We are back this weekend for instant reaction for Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. I'll be joined by Lee and 2 very special guests coming your way. Guys, thank you so much for all your support this week. It's been a great week for being a Spurs fan, hasn't it? Let's be honest about it. We had a fantastic win last night, followed up by Arsenal.
Where's that troll that was in here earlier?
They've all gone now. They've all gone.
They've all gone, haven't they? Where have they gone?
The flock are going, but honestly, quite thank you so much for all your support from Lee, from Martin, myself. Guys, keep safe, keep well. We'll be back with you at the weekend. And as always, come on, you Spurs.